The void of space was never silent. Not truly. To untrained ears, it was endless stillness, a black canvas without heartbeat or echo. But to those who had traveled its depths long enough, the exiles, the warriors, the survivors, it hummed. A vibration born of unseen energy, of reactor cores and burning engines, of ships slinking like shadows across the dark. And in this sector of space, far from mapped trade routes or sanctioned colonies, the hum was not of peaceful commerce. It was of the hunt. The Kareth, a nomadic species of crystalline exoskeleton and pale blue eyes, drifted into the Veil Nebula, seeking refuge. Their vessels, curved, slender things, shimmering like glass beneath starlight, were not warships. They were carriers of a people escaping annihilation. Entire generations clustered within fragile hulls, each vessel heavy with memory, history, the very seed of survival. They thought they were safe here. They thought the veil's obscuring mists would shield them. But the hunters had followed. The ships appeared without sound or warning, black silhouettes slipping from hyperspace like phantoms. There were 12 of them, each vast, triangular, jagged with weaponry. No signals, no declaration of intent. They didn't need to speak. Everyone in this quadrant knew them by reputation. The Jator hunter clans. They encircled the Kareth convoy like wolves around cornered prey. One by one, their drives flared, casting dull red halos across the nebula fog. They moved deliberately, tightening formation, each motion a reminder, there was no escape. Inside the Kareth flagship, panic spread. The elders debated. The young wept. Their leader, High Voice Severin, clutched the edge of the command dais as the sensor display painted the noose tightening around them. "We cannot run," whispered one of his advisors. "They'll pick us off before we even align our drives." "They do not seek trade. They do not seek parley," said another. "They have come for blood." Severin knew this. The Jator hunted not for resources, not for conquest. They hunted because it was what their culture demanded, the proving of dominance, the ritual slaughter of those too weak to resist. To them, the Kareth exodus was not tragedy. It was sport. A low vibration rippled through the ship as the hunters sent their first signal. Not words. A pulse, a growl across the void. The universal declaration of intent, prey has been marked. Severin closed his eyes. He had led his people across 5 systems, fleeing the burning wrecks left behind by these monsters. Each time, he had prayed for deliverance. Each time, it had not come. And now here, at the edge of nowhere, the circle had closed for the last time. Or so he thought. Because the void hummed with something new. Something alien. The sensors caught it first, a distortion at the nebula's fringe, like gravity itself had bent. The Kareth officers scrambled, shouting in confusion. The hunters paused, their formations faltering ever so slightly. And then it appeared. A ship unlike any they had seen before. It tore from hyperspace not with elegance, but with violence, like a blade ripping cloth. Its hull was armored, dark steel and jagged angles, built for endurance, not beauty. Along its flanks burned lines of blue fire, engines roaring with barely restrained fury. Weapons bristled across its body, rail batteries, missile bays, energy turrets, all powered and primed. It did not arrive alone. 1, 2, then a dozen more followed, bursting forth in quick succession. They emerged like thunderclaps, scattering nebula fog with their wake, encircling the encirclers. For the first time, the Jator hunters hesitated. The Kareth were stunned. "Who are they?" whispered one of Severin's advisors, voice trembling. The ship at the vanguard answered not with words, but with a transmission broadcast across the entire sector. A voice, steady and human, filled every channel. "This is the United Terran Fleet. You will disengage." The Jator responded with silence. Then laughter, a deep, guttural rumble that carried across comms. They had faced dozens of species in the past, all pleading, all bargaining, all breaking beneath their hunts. But the humans did not plead. They did not bargain. The Terran flagship adjusted course, angling directly at the largest hunter vessel. Its weapons lit like stars igniting. The blue fire along its flanks flared brighter. Again the human voice spoke, colder now, resonant with a conviction that shook even Severin's weary heart. This is your only warning. The nebula trembled, as if the cosmos itself waited for the answer. And in that charged silence, the Karath realized something no prey had ever felt in the presence of the hunters. Hope. The standoff stretched like an unbroken wire, tense, quivering, ready to snap. On one side, the Jator hunter clans, predators of 100 systems, engines glowing blood-red in the haze. On the other, the newcomers, the Terran fleet, steel giants whose presence carried no trace of fear. The Karath convoy hung frozen at the center, caught between annihilation and salvation, their fragile ships trembling like glass before a storm. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, the hunters made their choice. The largest of them, the dread cruiser Vorthrak, surged forward with a roar of thrusters. Its hull, obsidian and scarred from countless battles, glowed as its forward batteries powered up. Across the comms came the guttural challenge of the Hunter Lord. Another prey dares intercede. We shall carve your bones beside theirs. It was not negotiation. It was declaration. High-voiced Severin felt despair tighten his chest. The hunters would not back down. They never did. But the Terrans did not retreat. The human flagship, TNS Valiant, met the challenge head-on. Engines thundered, pushing the massive warship into the nebula mist. Its shields shimmered like a second skin, pale blue light crawling across its hull. Weapon ports rotated, targeting systems locked. And then, with no further warning, the void lit with fire. The Vorthrak unleashed its fury first, streams of plasma lancing across the darkness, claws of molten energy tearing toward the Valiant. The nebula glowed orange as the blasts carved through gas clouds. The Karath flinched, expecting to see the Terran vessel torn asunder. But the Valiant's shields flared bright, absorbing the storm. The ship did not falter. Instead, it answered. Rail batteries fired, each shot a spear of tungsten accelerated to hypersonic velocity. They tore across the void like falling stars. One slammed into the Vorthrak's flank, punching through armor with devastating force. A shockwave rippled through the hunter ship, scattering fragments into the nebula. The Jator were stunned. The Vorthrak, pride of the clan, had been wounded in the opening volley. The hunters roared in unison, their ships surging forward, weapons igniting. Plasma arcs, missile salvos, and shard cannons filled the space between. They struck not just at the Valiant, but the entire Terran formation. And the Terrans moved as one. Their ships did not scatter or retreat, they advanced. Every vessel in the formation was a blade drawn from the same forge, their captains drilled to fight as a single will. Shield grids overlapped, covering one another's flanks. Weapons sang in coordinated rhythm, each strike exploiting the gaps left by another. The Karath watched in awe. They had never seen warships dance this way, like a storm given order, like predators who had learned not only to hunt but to fight as a pack. Hunter ships exploded in bursts of fire. One, then another, ripped apart as Terran railguns hammered through their hulls. Yet still the Jator pressed on, their feral pride refusing surrender. The battle turned into chaos. Nebula clouds ignited under stray plasma, turning the field into a canvas of fire and shadow. Massive hulls slammed past one another, shields grinding, weapons flaring at point-blank range. The screams of dying crews echoed across comms, a symphony of rage and despair. And in the center of it all, the Valiant tore through the heart of the Hunter Circle. Its captain, Admiral Reeve, stood calm upon the bridge, eyes locked on tactical displays. His voice was steady, clipped with iron control. Target their drives. Cut their circle apart. Show them the cost of their hunt. The Terran fleet obeyed. Missiles streaked like comets into hunter ships, engines bursting in flames. Vessels spun helplessly, drifting, broken. Railgun fire hammered relentlessly, tearing predator after predator from the void. But the Jator did not break easily. Their ships rammed, claws of serrated hull plating shredding against Terran armor. Plasma beams gouged craters into Terran shields. One Terran frigate, the Endeavor, took a direct hit and detonated in a brilliant blue flare, its crew's sacrifice painting the nebula with fire. Admiral Reeve did not flinch. Close ranks. Make them bleed for every inch. The Kareth wept silently as they watched. They had never seen another species stand against the hunters this way, never seen anyone fight them without trembling, without begging. Humanity fought not as prey, but as equals. No, as predators. The turning point came swiftly. The Valiant locked its sights on the wounded Vorthrak. Its rail batteries recharged, its missile bays primed. The Hunterlord roared across comms, voice dripping with fury. You dare strike me? You dare defy the clans? Admiral Reeve's reply was cold steel. We don't dare. We decide. The Valiant's weapons fired as one. Rail slugs punched through the Vorthrak's forward hull. Missiles detonated deep within its reactor core. Plasma cannons lanced across its side, carving through its armored veins. The mighty Hunter Dread cruiser shuddered, bled fire, and then exploded in a cataclysmic burst. A shockwave rippled outward, scattering debris across the nebula. Silence followed. The Jator fleet faltered. Their leader's flagship was gone. Their prey was no longer helpless. And the Terrans, these newcomers, were proving themselves a force they had never encountered before. For the first time in centuries, the hunters hesitated. The Kareth ship erupted in cheers and sobs. For the first time in their long flight, they felt the chains of inevitability crack. But Admiral Reeve's eyes narrowed. His displays showed more hunter reinforcements arriving, slipping from hyperspace at the nebula's edge. Dozens more. The battle was not over. It had only begun. He spoke quietly, voice grim, but resolute. Signal the fleet. Hold formation. Humanity didn't come here to run. The nebula burned brighter as the hunters regrouped, their fury redoubled. The war for survival was far from finished. The nebula seethed with fire. Shattered wrecks drifted like broken teeth across the void, burning embers fading into black. The first wave of Jator hunters lay crippled, torn apart by steel and defiance. Yet as silence threatened to settle, the fabric of space rippled once more. More hunters arrived. Dozens of new signatures surged from hyperspace, sleek, jagged silhouettes, engines bleeding crimson light. They emerged in disciplined packs, their drives flaring as one. Where the first assault had been feral aggression, this second wave carried grim resolve. The clans had come in full. The Kareth convoy trembled. Their fragile ships huddled behind Terran lines, each vessel a fragile arc of memory. Hope had flared briefly in their hearts, but now fear clawed back. Could even these humans withstand such fury? On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral Reeve studied the tactical displays. The reinforcements numbered thrice his fleet. His jaw tightened. He had lost ships already, good crews, brave souls. More would follow before this day ended. His officers waited for orders, eyes burning with the same question unspoken: do we withdraw? But Reeve's voice was calm, steel wrapped in fire. Transmit to all ships, hold the line. The Kareth will not fall while we still draw breath. The order carried through the fleet. Terran captains, weary but unbroken, straightened in their command chairs. Their crews braced at weapon stations, hands steady, hearts alight. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. But they were human, and that had always meant one thing. They would not yield. The hunters surged forward, their war cries spilling across comms like a storm of rage. Plasma cannons ignited, missile clusters roared, shard weaponry screamed as it ripped through space. The Terran fleet met them in disciplined silence. The Valiant led the charge, shields blazing, rail batteries firing with relentless cadence. Its flanking cruisers fanned out, forming overlapping arcs of fire. Frigates darted like knives, weaving between giants to strike at weak points. Every vessel moved not as prey fleeing a predator, but as wolves baring their teeth. The nebula became a forge of war. Explosions painted clouds in shades of orange and violet. Metal screamed against metal as hulls collided, desperate rams shattering shields. Shards of hunter vessels spiraled into the void, glowing like meteors. But with each enemy destroyed, two more pressed in. On the Kareth flagship, high-voiced Severin watched the struggle with wide, glass-like eyes. He could hardly breathe. Humanity, this species he had never before encountered, was defying an enemy that had crushed entire civilizations. And they did not fight merely to survive. They fought to protect. The turning point came in the storm's heart. The hunters brought forth their war beast, the Jacqueroth, a ship of legend whispered in frightened tones, its hull layered in living armor, its weapons arrays vast enough to tear apart moons. It dwarfed the Valiant, its shadow stretching across the nebula like death incarnate. It advanced with a guttural broadcast, translated through comms as a promise of annihilation. Your courage ends here. The Valiant shook as the Jacqueroth's main batteries unleashed. Shields buckled, flaring under the strain. Decks trembled, alarms howled. Several Terran frigates were obliterated in an instant, ripped apart as if they were paper. On the Valiant's bridge, smoke filled the air, sparks showered from burning panels. Officers clung to their stations, their faces pale yet defiant. Shields at 30%. Reactor strain critical. Multiple casualties on decks 4 through 7. Admiral Reeves stood amidst the chaos, unyielding. His voice cut through the fire and smoke. Target its heart. Break the beast, or none of us leave this nebula. The Terran fleet rallied. Destroyers dove into the fray, unleashing missile storms that battered the Jacqueroth's outer armor. Cruisers carved through its escorts, hammering weak points with railgun fire. The Valiant pressed forward, bleeding light, its cannons firing in relentless rhythm. Every Terran ship fought beyond endurance, each crew refusing to yield even as their hulls burned. Humanity had always thrived on the impossible, and here, against the galaxy's deadliest predators, they would not falter. The Jacqueroth retaliated savagely, swatting vessels from the void. A Terran destroyer was torn in half. A cruiser detonated in brilliant fire. Yet for every loss, the fleet struck harder, driving deeper, refusing retreat. At last, the Valiant closed within range of its final gambit. Prepare the Nova Lance, Reeve ordered, his voice low. His officers stiffened. The Nova Lance, a prototype weapon, untested in battle. A weapon of terrible risk. If it failed, the Valiant would be left defenseless. If it worked, it could end the beast before them. The reactor groaned, the ship shuddered, lights dimmed as energy was redirected. The Valiant's prow split open, revealing a core of blinding blue fire. The weapon charged, its power rattling the very void. The Jacqueroth sensed the threat. It poured its fury into the Terran flagship, plasma and shards ripping at its failing shields. The Valiant bled, decks collapsing, crew dying. The ship trembled on the edge of destruction. And then, the Nova Lance fired. A beam of pure energy, concentrated fury, tore across the void. It struck the Jacqueroth square in its monstrous heart. Armor vaporized, decks shattered, its living hull shrieked as it split apart. The beam carved through its reactor, igniting a chain of explosions. The hunter warbeast roared, fractured, and then erupted in a blinding detonation that lit the nebula brighter than a newborn star. Silence followed. The hunters faltered, their morale shattered. Their beast was gone. Their first wave destroyed. Their pride broken. For the first time in their history, the clans tasted something alien on their tongues. Fear. One by one, their ships turned, drives flaring as they fled into hyperspace. The predators had been hunted. The Terran fleet, battered and burning, held the field. On the Kareth flagship, high-voiced Severin sank to his knees, tears streaking across his crystalline cheeks. His people had been spared, not by miracle, but by strangers who had chosen to fight when all others had abandoned them. He whispered a single word, a vow that would echo through generations. Humanity. Aboard the Valiant, Admiral Reeve stood on a ravaged bridge, his uniform scorched, his eyes weary yet unbroken. Around him, his crew worked in silence, mourning the fallen, repairing what could be saved. An officer spoke quietly, "Sir, we've done it. The hunters are retreating." Reeve's gaze remained fixed on the stars where the Jator had vanished. His reply was steady, resolute. "They'll return. Predators always do. But now, they know." He turned toward the surviving ships, the convoy of refugees, the countless lives that had looked to them in despair and found hope instead. Now the galaxy knows. Humanity is here. And we are not prey. And in the stillness that followed, amid burning wreckage and silent stars, a truth settled across the cosmos like a promise carved in fire. The hunters had circled their prey. But when humanity appeared, the hunt had changed forever.